So this week I made my second Wikipedia article for Wiki Loves Pride, and honestly, it took so long to write because it was just so fascinating learning about this author and everything he's done and written, and it took a while to pull myself back to getting into a position to put anything on the page. I wasn't even sure where to begin. So I wanted to talk about my process of putting together an article about one of his books on Wikipedia and what I decided to include and kind of the different trade-offs that happen when you try to include more details that you think are cool, but they require more research or sources, and where you kind of draw the line. So I'll start by just talking about the overall process. I talked in my last video about how I was using an encyclopedia to look up interesting topics that were not on Wikipedia that I did not know about before. So I'm skimming through this book, and I find a really interesting summary about this author and some of his works. And although the author has a Wikipedia page, his books don't have any pages. And I'm looking around on Google trying to find more information about the author, and just page after page that comes up is so fascinating. It feels like any work of his deserves its own Wikipedia page and could easily have enough material to support a Wikipedia page. So this is exciting. That means it's a great topic for me to write on. Of course, I don't know anything about the topic, and I want to do a little bit more research before I begin. So I'm looking for kind of a range of types of articles about him. And just from a quick search online, the easiest things that come up for authors are usually reviews about a given work of theirs, maybe interviews with the author. In his case, unfortunately, an obituary because he died in 2019. And you can find often analyses and critical recognition of an author's work later on, especially as their career grows. If you have an author that's well recognized, then it's pretty easy to find enough sources on them for a Wikipedia page. And in this case, there were plenty of sources to find, which was all very helpful for writing an article. So I found this range of types of pages, and I just had, my browser full of tabs. And I use all of those sources to fill in different sections of a new book article. And I kind of follow the same template every time. You have the book's name as the title of the page. You have a content section, which just gives a quick overview of the plot. And then you have the creation section, which is something I like to add in talking about how the author came up with this subject and some of their process going into it. I talk about publication, which is just very boring and short. And then reception, which is usually packed full of all of these reviews and what people thought about the book and how it was recognized later. And so you can fill in all of these with details from the different types of sources that I found earlier. And so now I'm just kind of going back and forth between the page I have and the sources I found. And when I start filling in the article, I might go section by section just to feel like I have kind of a complete grasp or at least a first draft of what a section is covering before I move on to something else so that I don't forget key pieces. And so here I started with the contents because I wanted to kind of reconstruct what a lot of the book was about from all of the different reviews that I was reading, because I'm not going to read the whole book right now to write the article, but I do want to provide a pretty balanced perspective on what the book was about, even though I'm not getting that info from the book itself. After I filled in these contents, I moved on to a section that's pretty unique to this article. I called it The Lost Chapter because that's what the author himself called one of his essays after the book was published. And in this essay, he comes out as gay and imagines what it would have been like to come out to his mother at her deathbed. And he talks in some videos after writing the essay about why he had chosen to come out and some of the personal reasons he had and some of the political reasons he had and just some of his hopes for the future. And it was just an incredibly moving series of work. And it was also very internationally noticed and had a big impact and also kind of reframed the previous memoir that he had written because he framed this essay as an additional missing piece to the memoir. So this was all really interesting to add to the article. And it's something that I kept wanting to read more about as I was researching. So I'm glad that I was able to add a section on it because I hope that other people will be able to discover it just like I had. And this is also a reason why I like to add creation sections to book articles, because I feel like so much of the personal story is the most important part of the story when we're talking about books that have been written and published. And I really like being able to learn more about an author and why they wrote a book and their process of writing a book. So I really appreciate reading Wikipedia articles about subjects where they give you more of that backstory, and it's something that I like to add when I have the chance. On the flip side, the publication section is very common on Wikipedia book articles, and it talks about how a book was published. I don't generally find I get much use from that, but, it's basic facts, and I try to put it in there, and if someone else cares more about this, then they can certainly expand it. The final section that's very common for these articles is the reception section, which talks about usually the awards that books have gotten and the reviews that books have gotten, along with any other sort of scholarly analysis of the impact, perhaps, although that sometimes is split out into an analysis section. And this is something you can kind of go as deep as you want to in writing because there's always going to be another review eventually. And so many people start with just kind of the basics and they look for, the Kirkus from the Publishers Weekly and the New York Times reviews. That's certainly one place to start. You can also look at, reviews that are closer in theming and intention to the subject. It's good to get a range of review sources, especially for subjects that are often marginalized and not well reviewed in large presses. But I find that it's nice to get this reception section kind of filled with richer content beyond just whether a review appreciated or disliked a work, because there's so much nuance in how people received a work and the larger takeaways that they get from it, that it's really nice to be able to share that with someone who just has the time to read a Wikipedia page on a subject. And with all of those sections, I found that I was ready to submit this article. It felt like fine enough to be out there in the world. And honestly, this is a pretty long article for me to write for a just starting out brand new article. Normally, my first articles would be a lot shorter, but I just found that there was so much content here, and the extra part of the memoir that was released later was so interesting and important that I really wanted to be able to include it all. And so it took me a lot longer to write this than it could have. And either way, I think it's really nice to be able to share an article about a subject and have more people read it and access it, because Wikipedia is such a prominent and accessible source of information, and it's the place that people go when they're first learning about a topic. So this article is certainly not complete, but I'm very happy that it's out there now and that there's one more avenue for people to learn about this book. So if you've ever read or listened to anything that really inspired you and it's not well represented on Wikipedia, I would definitely encourage you to add it to the encyclopedia, whether you're adding it to an existing article or trying to create one from scratch. And similarly, if there's a queer subject that's not represented on Wikipedia very well right now, this is a great month to add it because a lot of other people are working on similar areas. I'm going to try to submit a couple more articles for Wiki Loves Pride, not expecting to win any prizes, but again, it's just nice to be part of the community that's doing an event for the month. So please listen along if you're curious about what I get up to this month, and please let me know if you have any other questions about Wikipedia that I can answer, because I'm going to try to break down some of my process more. I think that editing Wikipedia is something that everybody can do, and it's just a little intimidating to get started. And so I would love to give people the tools they need to start changing the encyclopedia for the better. So thanks for listening, and good luck editing.